Before the advent of social media and before the advent of smartphones, do you remember when we used to go to nightclubs? And particularly I'm talking to the blokes here. Remember when we used to polish our shoes and iron our collars and put our shirt on, leave a couple of buttons open so everybody could see our hairy chests? Yeah? And we'd go to a nightclub and we'd put our BMW keys on top of our file of facts, order ourselves a large scotch, and obviously all the women would come flocking, right? We remember that. No? Okay, just me. But then Tinder came along and Match.com and all these other kind of places, and all of a sudden we were in a global marketplace. We weren't just competing with the other people in the nightclub. We were competing with everybody in the world. And it made us look completely different. Now, branding is very much the same. Now, for those of you that remember before the advent of digital marketing and social media and smartphones and all the rest of it, all you needed to build a great brand was loads of money, basically. You would do adverts in the broadsheets. You would do radio advertising. You would advertise on TV. If you were really rich, it'd be in the middle of Coronation Street. You know, they were the most expensive adverts. I do a whole skit around Ken Barlow and Deirdre Barlow are the forerunners to Jay-Z and Beyonce. Talk to me in the break, I'll tell you about that later. But essentially, we just needed loads of money. And then Google came along and made it global. We started competing on a global marketplace. And then social media made it accessible. It made it accessible to the masses. And this is when LinkedIn came in, and it made our brands visible. It made our brands ubiquitous, and it amplified our brand, whatever kind of brand we are, good or bad. So my name is Gus Bandel. I've been in marketing for almost 30 years. I got loads of letters after my name. I've worked for some of the world's largest companies. I run a LinkedIn-first marketing agency. I have a LinkedIn Focus membership. I run a LinkedIn local networking event, and I run a LinkedIn Focus conference. So I like to think I know a little bit about LinkedIn, and hopefully I can impart some of that knowledge to you today over the next 120 minutes. 20 minutes, sorry. So, now, a proper LinkedIn brand campaign can change the trajectory of your business fortunes. Obviously, what we want is more fame, more fortune, right? That's what we want for our brands. Ultimately, hopefully, you all know your place in the market. Knowing where your brand sits, knowing what your competitors are doing, knowing who your ideal clients are, etc. Hopefully, you know your story. We then know your place in the market. We then tell your story using the power of LinkedIn. You have to share that with people. You have to be very explicit with who you are, what you do, what your product is, what your service is, who you're servicing, who you work for, etc. And ultimately, you're creating an emotion in your ideal clients. Every brand that you can think of is a motive. Good or bad, it's a motive, and you're creating an emotion in your ideal clients. The brand relationship spectrum now, David Acker is essentially widely regarded as the godfather of branding, and he created the brand relationship spectrum. I'm not going to bang on about this, don't worry about it. So feel free to take screenshots of this, and obviously we can talk about this later. But essentially, 4 types of brand relationships where we are on the spectrum: branded houses, sub-brands, endorsed brands, house of brands. Hopefully you guys can kind of obviously look at this and do the research on the kind of brand that you are, the kind of brand that your business is, and where it sits. And particularly for those of you that work for larger brands, and where those brands sit in a much wider market. Now, the hotel market is a great way of explaining this in terms of where you sit in relationship to other brands. So, for example, the people that are looking at Premier Inn won't necessarily be looking at the Waldorf, I imagine, but they might look at Hilton if they've had a good month, etc. And it's really easy to see where brands sit on the spectrum. When you are in the market for hotels, you're looking at different markets. And the same applies to, for example, the airline industry, Ryanair versus British Airways, or supermarkets, Lidl versus Waitrose, or the automotive market, BMW versus Vauxhall, for example. What these brands have done is they know their place in the market, and then they tell that story to essentially create brand equity. Not every brand does it well, though. Now, I'm sure we all know this story. I won't bang on about it. I actually quite like the rebrand, but essentially they failed. It was a step too far. They kind of took the wrong trajectory. It changed their business. So word of warning, don't do what Jaguar did. Now, obviously, we all love LinkedIn, right? Everybody's on LinkedIn. It's the world's biggest business-focused platform. There's 1.2 billion people on there. There's about 200 million businesses on there. And it's great, and it works really well. There's only one small problem with LinkedIn. Company pages are rubbish. Oh, that's the wrong slide. Anyway, company pages aren't very good. But obviously, I'm here to tell you how to make them work. Ultimately, we all need three things on LinkedIn: visibility, credibility, and consistency. These are the three things that work, and one or two of them won't work in silos. You need all three. You need to be visible, you need to be consistent, but ultimately you need to have a credible business. Again, I won't bore you to death with this, but Kevin Keller, the brand equity model, feel free to take screenshots, etc., or talk to me in the break about this. For those of you that are social media managers, for those of you that are marketers, for those of you that are business owners, hopefully you have dealt with this and worked with your clients on how to manage the brand equity model and essentially where you sit. And this is very much about who you are, what you do, what about you, and essentially resonating with your audience. Ultimately, you want to take your client, your business, etc., up to resonating with your ideal audience. So creating that brand equity, using the power of LinkedIn to make sure that you resonate with an audience and create a relationship with them. Now, as we know, it's not a marketing conference that we don't mention innocent drinks, right? Every marketing conference, somebody has to mention innocent. Sorry, it's me. So innocent drinks, the darling of the marketing industry. Now, obviously, everybody knows them from Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. They're incredibly funny, incredibly jovial. Their content, more often than not, is complete nonsense. But it's incredibly funny, and they've created a brand persona. Now, for those of you that have seen Innocent on LinkedIn, it's a completely different story. It's very much B2B, what they do on LinkedIn. They very much focus on the fact that they support charities, they're a sustainable organization, they're a B Corp, they have fair trade ingredients, et cetera, et cetera. It's very much telling a brand story. So their LinkedIn profile is very much targeted at partners, stakeholders, people they want to work with. They're telling their brand story, other than the nonsense on Twitter where they're live tweeting along with the Great British Bake Off. They do every week they do this. So it's a very different brand story. Another great story is Surreal Cereal. I don't know if anybody's heard of these guys, but if you haven't, you should have. So the social media manager at Innocent Drinks, a guy called John Thornton, he left Innocent and went over to Surreal. And essentially he took everything he learned there about brand, tone of voice, humor, joviality, sharing personality, etc., and took it to Surreal. These guys, in the space of 2 years, went from 0 to 140,000 followers on LinkedIn. They went from essentially being a startup brand, creating high-protein cereals, and now they're on the shelves of Sainsbury's. Now, I'm not saying it's specifically down to LinkedIn, but LinkedIn was their main channel where they told that brand story. And essentially, they went from new to the market to market disruptor to now essentially challenging the major players on the shelves of supermarkets. And it's because they told a brand story. Now, when we want to make LinkedIn work for us, essentially, we want our team to assemble. And when I say team, I mean your colleagues, your employees, your management, your C-suite executives, your stakeholders, your suppliers, the people around you, the people that are involved in your business. Get them together to be a part of your content. So I'm sure you've heard many kind of LinkedIn specialists talk about employee advocacy. In essence, we want our team to be team players. We want them to get involved. We want them to be part of the team, take pride in where they work, etc. I often say that if you have a team that are not engaging and they're not sharing your content on social media, they're not team players. They don't like them. Sack them. Get rid of them. Or take them through a performance review, just to be clear. I don't work in HR. But employee advocacy, we want our team to be team players, and we want them to obviously share our content, talk about our content, etc. So how to be effective? This is kind of like technical data. Comments are the currency on LinkedIn. Comments currently is what is winning on LinkedIn. You will see that you can now see impression counts on comments. So some of my comments get more impressions than some of my actual posts, which admittedly is really annoying. But it's showing the way of LinkedIn. They want to garner conversation. So the best thing to do is comment. The second best thing is like. The third best thing is share. You don't want your team to be liking content. Well, you do, but what you want them to do is comment on content. If they can do all three, great, a real bonus. They're a real team player. Promote that guy. But otherwise, you just want them to comment. If you have any power over your team, you want to tell them to comment on your content. Strategic networking. Now make sure that from your company page, you're following other businesses. Now I talk about horizontal and vertical markets. So my horizontal market is the market, they're my ideal clients. So I work with service sector businesses. So for example, accountants, coaches, consultants, marketers, HR, lawyers, all that kind of stuff. They're my horizontal market. They're the people that I want to talk to on a regular basis. So they're the people that I engage with. Then I have my vertical market, which is businesses like mine. Businesses that have an audience that have the same audience as me. So for example, ad agencies, SEO specialists, graphic designers, web developers, etc. So I engage with my vertical market and I engage with my horizontal market, which becomes a huge word of mouth referral network on LinkedIn. And then there's thought leadership. I always say that particularly your team, you should empower your team to create content based around what they're doing, based around their business. I know there are many employees in this room of larger businesses, and hopefully you're creating content that says, my boss sent me to this conference and actually it was okay. No, it wasn't okay, it was great. That's what you want to tell people, just so you know. But also, speaking of which, you need a top-down strategy. It has to come from management. Because if the management are involved, the team don't give it, they don't care. Am I allowed to use prefer? No, okay, I won't. It's a top-down strategy. So basically, make sure that the management are involved as well. So if you run a business, if you're the boss of a business, if you lead a marketing team, whatever it may be, you want a top-down strategy, which starts with empowering your team. Obviously, empower your team to create their own content, particularly on the LinkedIn company page. Add it to your company infrastructure. It's amazing how many people I work with when they kind of say, oh, we really want, LinkedIn is our main focus. And it's not on their email signatures. It's not on their business cards. I can't find it on their website. Everybody mentions Instagram. Like, oh, find us on Instagram. They haven't posted on Instagram since 2018. Just complete nonsense. But they say, oh, LinkedIn is our main channel. So add it to your company infrastructure as well. And then add it into your workplace culture. Make sure it's part of the workplace culture where you allow your team to spend a few minutes every day on LinkedIn, engaging, commenting, creating content, wherever it may be. And I always talk about efficiency. You don't need to be on LinkedIn like 23 hours a day. Like I do, it's all right for me. It's what I do for a living, for example. But for people who have a proper job, you haven't got time to spend all day, every day on LinkedIn. Gymshark is a classic example of this. It's a great example of where they empowered their team. Yes, they're a disruptor brand. They came into the market led by a couple of guys. They made obviously billions and all that kind of stuff. But actually, they empowered their team to create content, to engage with the content, to share the content, and actually as part of the workplace culture, wear the items, go out, tell people what it is, etc., and engage with other businesses on LinkedIn. They really empowered their team, and again, it's a far stretch to say it was only LinkedIn that made them a multi-billion-dollar company, but it helped, and it was a massive help. So ultimately, employee advocacy plus top-down strategy equals the big brand picture. Now, if I had more time, I'd play the world's worst game of blankety blank, but we're not going to do that. So brand blank. So what we want in our brand is we want growth, we want exposure, we want to reinforce our brand to our audience, we want to make sure that we show off our brand as healthy, and make sure that it's perceived well by our ideal clients. So ultimately, this is the bigger picture of what we want our brand to be on LinkedIn. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I contacted LinkedIn because I said, I get a lot of engagement, but my reach is down. Can you just look under the hood? Because I think I've been shadow banned. And they replied and said, no, it's just your content's crap. But it was nice. But they gave me some advice, specific advice to the question that I asked them. What they said was meaningful engagement is work. So this was something they told me like literally 2 weeks ago. So meaningful engagement. And earlier when I said comments are currency, this is what they're focused on. They're focused on meaningful engagement, people writing comments, and not writing crap like great post or thanks for sharing, none of that nonsense. They want longer comments that garner conversation. So from your company pages, you should be engaging with other businesses, your horizontal and your vertical markets, to be able to talk to more businesses. Carousels versus videos. 2025 was supposed to be the year of video on LinkedIn. They're shit. They're rubbish. They're not very good. Forget videos. They work for some businesses, but not all businesses. Whereas carousels, or document posts, as we call them on LinkedIn, because we can't call them carousels, sounds very unprofessional. Document posts do really well, and it's because it helps the dwell time algorithm. There's an algorithmic feature of LinkedIn. The longer somebody spends on your content, the more likely it is they're going to push out your content to more of your audience. Hence why PDF and document posts work really well, because people are scrolling, so they're spending longer time on your content. And if they spend longer time on your content, the algorithm will push it out to more people. Okay. The optimal posting frequency, they've corroborated the advice that I normally give to my clients. 3 posts a week is what works. If you're new to a content journey, I normally recommend 1 to 2 posts per week. But if you have an established business, if you've been on LinkedIn for a while, etc., 3 to 4 posts is the optimal amount to actually, you don't need to post every day, for example, but also don't go the other way and only post once a week, okay? And then finally, brand new metrics on LinkedIn, which have also just come to company pages as well. They're counting the number of times your content has been saved or sent to somebody else in like DMs, etc., or somebody's copied the link and used it elsewhere, etc. The more saves you have, the better your content will be in terms of engagement, in terms of reach, etc. LinkedIn are now looking for savable content, and savable content is usually educational content. The content, the post where I shared this on LinkedIn, which essentially said this is what LinkedIn told me works on LinkedIn, was saved 106 times, and it was seen by like 20,000 people. And it just went out to lots of people, like for me, that's pretty viral on LinkedIn, but it went well. But savable content is where LinkedIn are pushing their content strategy. And the most important metric, anybody know the most important metric when it comes to social media? Money. That's what we want. Now, cold hard cash, moolah, the green, the monnaies, what we want is to make money on LinkedIn. It's all very well posting and getting your team to post and saying, oh, I had a lovely day at the social media conference. Yeah, nobody cares. What they care about is, what does your business actually do? What is the purpose of you going there? What are you educating us with? It is when you become an authority, it's creating content when you become an authority on LinkedIn, which ultimately drives customers, drive sales. So if you know your story, if you know your place in the market and you're telling your story, ultimately you want to create cash. That's the best metric in any business. Now, where LinkedIn fits into the digital marketing ecosystem, LinkedIn can be a bottleneck. So this is a very simplistic digital marketing ecosystem. Your customers find you on Google, then they go to your website. On your website is a little button that says find us on LinkedIn. They click on LinkedIn, they go to LinkedIn and think, man, this guy's content is rubbish. And then they stop. They don't sign up for your email marketing. They don't take it offline. They don't pick up the phone. They don't book meetings. They don't give you cash. Your business dies. Your wife leaves you. Your dog walks out. All that kind of stuff. So on LinkedIn, you have to create great content, but it has to talk to your ideal audience. You have to be there to talk to your ideal audience. So make sure that LinkedIn isn't a bottleneck for your digital marketing ecosystem. The way people find you, this is the route that most businesses take, most people take when they want to find us, etc. Make sure LinkedIn isn't the bottleneck in your ecosystem. So a quick summary, what's working on LinkedIn right now. So personally, and so Jesse mentioned earlier, like lo-fi content and like behind the scenes content, etc. Behind the scenes content is working really well on LinkedIn. It absolutely flies. But adding personality, adding that brand voice, doing the, the Ryanair, the innocent, the surreal kind of, the marketing works really well. Excuse me. Employee advocacy as well. Make sure that your team are happy, obviously, and make sure that they become internal influencers. They are sharing content on behalf of the company. And then how should brands be using LinkedIn in 2025? Like I said, a top-down strategy helps the big brand audience, big brand picture, consistency plus credibility plus visibility. So it's incredibly important. Knowing your place and attracting your audience creates emotion in your ideal clients, and ultimately, do not forget to sell. So hopefully you've taken plenty of screenshots today. Obviously, I blasted through that. I was only given 20 minutes. Obviously, I'm around for the break and talk to me. If you haven't taken enough screenshots, feel free to use this one. I'll move out the way, don't I? So, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gus Bandal. Thank you so much for listening today.
Gus, we have got time for a couple of questions.
Cool.
Yeah? So
please.
any questions for Gus? And if we don't have time for any more, he'll be around, like he said. So hands up if you do have a question, and Ellen will bring a mic to you. Is he well, Ellen? Is he well?
A very quick question regarding LinkedIn's algorithm. Lately, I've been noticing I get brands content 3 weeks, 1 month later. How can brands ensure that the message they're sending come in quicker? Because I'm getting content maybe like 3 months after it's posted as my feed. Like the feed doesn't promote new content lately. What I've been seeing when I post content as well, and when I see others, I get much later than what is actually posted.
That's a fabulous question, and particularly, so it's about the staggering of content. So what happens now is, so I always recommend don't post time-sensitive content. So for example, don't look at my LinkedIn, because this morning I said, I'm at the social media conference. People are going to see that in 3 weeks' time. Like, oh, that's great. I want to be there. It's like, I've been. However, the idea is that what your content strategy should focus on the business story, and the business story is not time sensitive. And the way LinkedIn works is at the moment, they're looking for early engagement. So when you post a piece of content, the more people that like it and comment it in that instance, LinkedIn are now staggering it over a period. So it used to be 2 to 3 days. Now it's 2 to 3 weeks. So they're staggering. So what's happening is, so I could see a piece of content. Like you would see a piece of content that says, the algorithm is showing you this content, you should see this content, you're going to be interested in this content, but it's 3 weeks old. But the algorithm is still showing it to you because it still believes you're interested in it, because what it does is it is now slowly distributes it to an audience. So the point is, if you don't get early engagement, it dies. You won't see it. Nobody will see it in 3 weeks. So it's the two-pronged approach of making sure that something is savable or educational enough or funny enough or jovial enough or whatever it may be for people to engage immediately. And that's what will push it out, for example. My post about the LinkedIn stuff, it's in the first 48 hours, it got like 5,000 views. And then a week later, it had 20,000 views, basically. So, and it keeps going up because it's just slowly sending it to my audience. So my advice is, don't send out time-sensitive content. There's not much we can do about the algorithm in terms of time sensitivity. But actually, it's a good thing if people are seeing it in a week because the algorithm is saying, you should see this content. Any others?
Cwestiwn da. Rwy'n arall? Anyone else? Oh, sorry, we'll come to you.
Hi.
Hello.
I've always seen LinkedIn as like a really professional, like polished platform with like proper good posts on it. But would you say that like we could lean more into the like brand personality, like lo-fi content, like that was mentioned earlier?
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be my post for tomorrow, just so you know. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things with LinkedIn is that it's becoming a place where people get to know people, and it's where so it's very. I have a whole talk about LinkedIn is the new Facebook, because actually it's where we want to build relationships, speak to people, you know, converse with one another, etc. So I think LinkedIn is the perfect place to do this. It's no longer the place for essentially stuffy old people in suits, kind of just talking about like ISO 9001 kind of accreditations. Nothing wrong with those, obviously, but it's very much about the brand personality, so the background. So go and check out Innocent Drinks, go and check out Surreal and all those kind of brands. You'll see exactly the kind of content they create, which is very much personality-led. When we have the overly polished, the fancy kind of 3-minute videos created in studios and all that kind of stuff, nobody cares. Nobody watches that kind of stuff. It's about people buy from people. And if we're talking about brands, it's people buying from brands. We want to get to know brands like we did like many years ago before digital marketing came out. Does that help? Any others?
There's one more over here, I think, and then we'll have to wrap up, unfortunately.
You're really making it work, run around the...
Getting a steps in.
Hi.
Yeah. Hello.
How can we make our staff more confident to actually engage on LinkedIn? Because a lot of the people I work with, I think LinkedIn scares them. So they'll rather just not engage than actually engage. How can we kind of break that barrier down?
So one aspect would be leading from the front. So I have a top-down strategy. So the kind of content that you would be creating, you would want your team to create that kind of content as well. But I always say, just tell your staff to be themselves. Tell your team to be themselves in terms of what are they up to? What are they doing? What's their favorite food? Have they been to a conference? Have they been to an event? Do they go networking, etc.? You know, did the boss buy everybody pizza in the office? It's these kind of stories, and actually that kind of stuff also counteracts all the AI slop that we see on LinkedIn now, like people just writing any old nonsense, through the AI, because our personal experiences are only ours. Only we can share our personal experiences. So by doing that, what we do is we create internal influencers, because people want to then hear from those people. The kind of content that I create, sure, I have a content strategy for my business, but it's interspersed with lots of stuff about me and my life and what's going on, etc., which then makes people gravitate towards me. And the same will be for the team. So just tell them, what have you done this week? I normally say, get them to journal their week. So every Friday, write a post, turn them into like Adrian Mole, there's Target reference, Gen X reference there, and get them to diary their week. Like Monday I saw a new client, Tuesday I got a testimonial, Wednesday we all had pizza in the office, Thursday I got fired, whatever. So don't tell them to do that. But journal their week, because they're the only ones that can write that content. And what will happen is people will start being attracted to those people and like essentially attract their tribe, as they say.
Hope that helps. Thank you very much. Put your hands together for Gus Bandal once again, Geoffrey.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.